92%.
Okay, good evening. Thank you, everyone who's joining us for this meeting. Um, we did have a special meeting at 3 o'clock, so that's why you smell lunch meat. We had a short meal break in between. If you can all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. City Councilperson Seark is missing tonight. She's ill. Brings us to the public forum. At this time, the public is permitted to address the City Council on items not appearing on the agenda. Comments may not exceed 5 minutes. In accordance with state law, however, no action or discussion may take place on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. The City Council may respond to statements made or questions asked, or may request staff to report back at a future meeting on the matter. Would anyone care to address the council on an item not on the agenda? Lottie? Yeah, right there. You could sit at Vicky's seat.
Special accommodations.
Can you turn it on?
Press that button.
Press the button.
The button. Thank you.
Tell her she can turn it off.
I'm here to request the council to direct ACRA to provide enrichment programs during the summer for our school-aged kids. I'm aware of the after-school program and the daycare program in the summer, but that's not enrichment, that's daycare. I have 3 school-age grandchildren. 1 lives here in Sutter Creek and 2 live in 2 different cities. And those 2 have a plethora of choices for enrichment all summer long. Day camps, half week or half days, full days, week programs, 2-week programs, everything from baseball to archery in the sports world, music, art, theater, dancing, science, focusing on STEM projects, outside activities, hiking, cooking, you name it. And we have nothing here. We have families who live here who drive to and from Sacramento and the surrounding areas for enrichment during the summer, and they shouldn't have to do that. And that money that they're paying, which they're happy to pay for enrichment, that money should be staying here in the community. And could be if ACRA were providing an enrichment for our kids. ACRA has money to do this. They can pay adults to teach these courses, whether it's a teacher, coach, or any adult who's willing to do this work. I suppose ACRA should start with reaching out to possible adults in the community who could do this and reaching out to families to find out what areas they would most be interested in. And I would like to check on the progress of this, hoping that it will move along because it's almost March and summer's going to be here before we know it. And it would be great if enrichment could start this summer for our local families.
ACRA's board meetings are Brown acted open to the public. They're a JPA, so we do pay into ACRA, and we could certainly address this with them, but to speak directly to them would probably help too. I don't know when they are, but we could figure that out.
Okay, that would
There's
be great.
2 board of supervisors. Julia's our representative on ACRA, and she's not here tonight, so she can't answer your questions, but we'll let you know when the meetings are.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for your time.
Is Michael Rock going to be here tonight? No, he's sick. Okay.
Anyone else care to address the council on an item not on the agenda? Let's see this person.
What happened to the summer program we used to have? It was right here in Sutter Creek.
Lottie mentioned that they have one that's like a summer daycare kind of.
No,
Yeah.
it's not, no, it's not daycare. There was like science
And
and,
I think that
history
was,
and-
I think that was 2 or 3 summers ago. that
Yeah?
happened. I don't think it was last summer.
no, I think it was spearheaded by the former manager,
It
Amy.
was something Amy did.
Yeah.
It occurred one year and I don't think it occurred after that. It was a nice thing, but I think it,
Well,
did continue.
just revive it.
Go ahead.
I don't know anything about it.
No, but you have to speak right into it.
I don't,
Oh, you do have to push a button then.
I don't think it's on.
Thank you.
There you go.
Okay, that sounds nice and loud. My name is Craig Lambert. I live at 40 Nickerson Street, and I'm here to talk about the walking path that basically is my driveway. When we first moved in, the walking path was what it was 100 years ago. The McDonald's, when they first built it, they had a beautiful picture, a huge picture from the archive, and our house was in the bottom of the picture, and you saw this giant elephant back that curved down and hit Nickerson Street. It was dirt. Errata was on one side, and we were on the other. And so we had to carve that. We had a pad put in. We modernized. I put in a driveway and a retaining wall. And I knew I had to keep the easement. It's a public walking easement. It's been there forever. And so the problem is that, and the upper neighborhoods use it extensively. The track team runs on it. Kids ride their bikes down it. The Daredevils do. But with erosion over the years, the pathway has gotten dished out, and now it's basically kind of free flowing gutter of sorts. And the steepest part of it is eroding to the point where I think it's a danger for pedestrians, certainly for bikes. And it's going to undermine the block wall that I put in. And so I'm bringing it to your attention. I know that you can't take any action, but I'm hoping that it's something that you'll study, because it certainly serves the community. I don't know how people from the upper neighborhoods would get into town. I have seen some people who were misguided, and they were trying to walk down the giant S and not get killed like a deer. So the pathway is very important for those people. And I appreciate it. I get to meet half the neighborhood just walking in my back area. But it's also a nuisance because it washes all the dirt and the mud down my driveway. And so it needs to be looked at for some kind of water mitigation. Maybe they need to put in steps, maybe railing. But my issue is it's on my property, but I can't do anything to fix it, because if I did, my feeling is I would be liable. If I put something in and somebody tripped and fell on it, they would not go after the city. I'm guessing they would come after me. And so I haven't touched it, but I'm strongly tempted to. But a smarter thing is to come to the city council and bring it to your attention, and maybe have you put it on some kind of study. The city engineer, the public works department, whoever wants to look at that and study it and see what needs to be done. Because the water at the top of the pathway, there are places where if you had like a little cut, water would be diverted and it would be absorbed into the grass in somebody's backyard, but it just stays on the pathway and it picks up speed, and then it starts eroding. And so that's the issue. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just figure you guys did a beautiful job behind the baseball diamond and other places in town. And I'm just thinking this might be the next thing on the list that would serve especially the upper neighborhoods that use it so extensively. And I would, of course, appreciate it because I wouldn't have to dig out my driveway. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. You're absolutely right, and I use it a few times a week, so thank you for that. But I'm sure Dan and Tom will get back to you.
Thank you.
Anyone else care to address the council on an item not on the agenda? Okay, that brings us to the approval of minutes from our February 3rd meeting.
So city manager's report and
Oh, yeah. city manager's report.
I don't really have one. but,
Actually,
I have a quick comment though.
before that though, it's not my fault. You're moving things around. So, item 8 under,
Well, I was going to cover that.
yeah, 8. Okay, then go ahead.
So,
Hold it together too long already.
so, sorry, sorry, I forgot the gentleman's name. So Craig, I guess, talk.
Lambert?
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Dan. Just, so I think one thing that Mr. Lambert should know is, again, we have our CIP on consent tonight. That was a project that the council added as a top priority project, so it's definitely on our list. And then ACRA actually has some funds, so I think we were looking to actually use some funds to fix this walking trail. So just want to make sure you were aware of that as you guys talk, but it's a priority. And then tonight, we were supposed to have an update from ACRA, but Michael Rock is sick, so that item's been moved to March 3rd. So I don't know if Lottie, if you want to come back for that one. And then and Claire was just about to point out that item 8 has been mistitled. It was meant to be administrative agenda, not future agenda item. And the wastewater update is an information item for tonight. So just to correct the agenda. And that's all I had for today.
Thank you, Tom. Approval of the minutes from the February 3rd meeting. Any comments or corrections?
I shared one minor correction with Tom already, and having done that, I'd move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Consent, did you abstain, Jim?
Abstain.
Consent agenda, we have the CIP, which is brought back with some kind of minor changes that are identified in the agenda. Did you want to introduce it again, Tom, or?
Not really. That's why it's on consent.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
I just have one comment on it. I did, speaking of this walking path, I believe it may be now mischaracterized in the CIP because it talks about from Highland Drive to Sutter Hill Road, which would have been a different direction. We need to make sure that it's coming from Highland and or Patricia down 49 to connect with the existing path that the gentleman was just referring to
To Nickerson.
through Nickerson.
Okay.
Thank you. With that correction, I'd move to approve the consent agenda.
So you do have members of the public that may want to speak on the consent. but
Thank you.
Would anyone care to speak from the public? Now that you know that your trail's on our capital improvement plan?
Well, it's also the second item, the oversight committee.
Do we need to, since Dan made a comment, do we need to approve the CIP first separately, or can we still
You could
consider
approve
the
them
whole
both
consent?
with the correction to.
Okay. Did anyone on the council have a comment on the write-up from the TUT tax oversight committee policy?
No, I see Martin's here, and I'm not sure if you wanted to share some information or not.
Martin, did you want a chance to speak? Did you see in the agenda?
I did.
Okay.
Thank you. Martin Ryan, Sutter Creek. Yeah, the only comment I wanted to thank Tom, we collaborated on the policy for that committee. And I think it meets all the standards that we're looking at without overreaching in other areas that we don't need to be in. So I thank Tom for that help, and we much appreciate it. Look forward to moving forward with it. Thanks.
Thanks for working with us, Martin.
Did you make a motion to approve the consent?
Yeah, but it was premature, so go ahead.
Now we can.
No, go ahead.
All right, so I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we have a information item on wastewater system. Dan?
So I know it's been a little while since I gave you kind of an update on what's been going on with the wastewater plant and all the planning that we've been doing. So just put together a little bit of slides, like 4 slides that just kind of hit the main topics. There's a lot in there, so I just kind of wanted to highlight everything that we were going over. So what we've done so far, the SRF planning grant, that was expired by the time me and Tom got here. We finished up getting the project report done and we've closed that out. That doesn't mean that we can't apply for it again. We spent about $250,000. The limit on those loans is about 50 million. So we're not going to have trouble, because of the 250,000 being done. We just have to reapply. That would have happened whenever we started. So we didn't lose any ground. We just can go back to it and start again if we want to. So that was wrapped up. The rate study, we all know that started in this last year. That was our first rate increase, 45%. We have a 20, I think, 20 and 2 nines. So that'll be for 5 years. So that expires at the end of 2028. That'll be the last rate increase. And then we would have to go to another Prop 218 and do another rate increase if we wanted to do that again, because those are only valid for 5 years. So that's all you can do. Financing, we've been talking to iBank. We have a number in our head that we can borrow up to. There is a little bit of wiggle room in there, probably like $5 million wiggle room. But there will be a little bit of a gap, we think, and that'll be done by either development fund fees or grants, one of the two. Can't really ever count on grants, but we will be applying for those and hopefully we'll get them.
Can you share what that number is that you're guessing it might be?
Yeah, it's somewhere around 20 million, 25 million is what we're guessing.
Okay. No, the actual
the borrowing. Yeah.
From the iBank.
Yeah, from iBank.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't usually like to say the numbers just because that gets a price in somebody's
Sure.
mind, and we
Right.
don't know, based on what the plant has, we don't know whether that'll be enough, or not enough. So
It's in that CIP.
Yeah, that's right.
Is there any, do we have any idea of the time frame when the financing available through grants might be changing given?
we've talked to
Recent.
consultants, and if we go the SRF route, they say in a year we could get funded. So yeah, it's not really super long term. It'd be fine with us. The plant, we probably would start designing, end of this year, start of next year. So we would have some time, before we got to that point where we'd actually need money. We probably wouldn't need money until 27, 28.
Yeah. so
I think my question, what I meant was, if the source of those types of funds dries up in the near future, federally or, at the state, how long is it left there that we could still apply? Are we in a bigger hurry now? If
The
that
grants kind of
changes?
always come and go. They ebb and flow. There's not really sometimes they're better, sometimes they're worse, but we can't plan on that. So you just apply for the SRF. If you apply, you're on the list all the time. And being a small disadvantaged community, we would get priority. So we would have better luck with that one, so. But yeah, the urgency is always on, but it's not more on than it usually is, I guess. If that makes sense. Capacity, we've identified some new capacity for the plant. We had a lot of capacity that was pre-designated for developments that are just not going to happen anymore. So we've taken that off the list. That's freed up a little bit of room in the plant. We have enough room for the first phase of Gold Rush if that goes forward. So that would be a good help. And then on the ARSA front, we've got a good relationship with ION, good relationship with CDCR, I think, at this point. All the operators talk a lot. And so, yeah, we've managed to get rid of all of our water this year. We're pretty much dry going into this summer. So I don't think we'll have to do a lot of irrigation, which is great. That'll save us some money. It'll also afford us to do the Henderson Underdrain project. We're starting to look into that real seriously in the next month. So we'll be trying to go out for bids in a couple months. But yeah, hopefully that project will be done this year by fall. So currently what we're working on, the collection system. We're trying to attack the I&I. So we have our flow meters in. The company talked to me about a week ago. They said that they had all the data. I didn't really agree, so we decided to keep it in there for another week through this last storm. And I'm kind of glad we did because that seemed to be a big one. So we got about 1.7 million coming through the plant, which is better than what we've had before. Don't know if it was apples to apples, but usually around this time it would be somewhere in the 2 million. So 1.7 is a little better. I don't know if the intensity was the same as the other storms, but it seems to be progressing in a positive way. Having that Sutter Oaks collection system done, that's definitely reduced our times we've had to go out there. And so if we're not going out there to clean the pipes, I'm assuming that all the water is going through and that it's a tighter system also. So maybe that's where some of our reduction is coming from. And then I wanted to list all of the projects. So up there, you see project identified for replacement. There's 6 projects on that list. Now those are mainly high intensity, like emergency problems. So we're attacking those first because those take the most of our time. You know, when those are called, those are repeat offenders. One of them, Rayland, that has been twice since I've been here. So that's just unacceptable. You know, we need to fix that. Some of the other ones, the same thing. You know, we've been out there a couple times. They're known issues. So we want to attack those first. Once we get those, that'll be this summer. After that, we'll have more flow data, and then we'll be able to target each basin that we know is the biggest. And then we'll really start to see a little more reduction of all those.
So the projects you have listed up there, are those I&I projects or other issues?
Yeah, we're going to be like, one of them is like replacing a drop manhole. The other ones are bursting, you know, so it's all going to be replacing the collection system out there for all those issues. For the wastewater plant, we've tried to look through all of our capital improvements and realize what is immediate need versus something that would be nice to have down the road. So the one example I have is we tried to reline the contact chamber. Now for that, we have to divert flow. We have to get in there. We have to repaint the whole thing. We ended up getting bids, and the project ended up being about $250,000. So if the plant was going to be around for 10 years, yeah, we'd go ahead and do that. But since the plant's probably going to be around for 5 years, we decided to defer that. We found you just kind of go in there and kind of paint it real fast. You know, it's kind of a quick and dirty job for like $10,000. So we ended up doing that this summer. That'll last us for a couple of years. We'll have to do it more frequently, but we won't ever get up to $250,000. So we're trying to save money doing that way.
What's an SSO?
Sanitary sewer overflow.
Okay.
So that's like anytime the wastewater goes outside of the manhole or onto anything. And usually it's an emergency call, so it costs us more.
Did you start using the aerator?
Yeah, we did.
How's it going?
It went good, and then we sucked up some weeds, and we think we burned it up. So we're gonna have to take it apart again and check out how it's going. So yeah, it's a constant battle. With regards to ARSA, we've started doing the individual water balances. The water board is starting to update our permit. So the first step in that is for us to all, City of Sutter Creek does a water balance, Ione does a water balance, CDCR does a water balance. The water board will agree on all of our water balances, and then they'll have us do a joint water balance. The preliminary discussions have been that there's too much water in the system. They are going to, we don't know for sure, but the indications are that they're not going to allow us to use Bowers anymore. Bowers is a flood irrigation. They have not liked that forever. And so we think that when the new permit comes out, they're going to not allow us to do that anymore. So that will force us to either go find more spray fields somewhere else that are irrigation, or jump off HARSA, one of the two. But it's not going to be cheap either way. So
how could you just jump off ours?
well, I mean, that'll be like moving on into a wastewater plant and going direct discharge into the creek kind of thing.
So they won't give us, if we had a plant on the drawing board and contracted to build, is there any chance that we could continue the current irrigation system, the flood irrigation, until that new plant comes online? Or
They would probably let us.
would they consider that?
Yes, they would probably consider letting us do it for a short period of time, maybe. We'd have to talk to them
And I
about
think, I
that.
think the way you said it is exactly right, is that particularly if we have issued an RFQ and we've taken steps to demonstrate we're doing more than talking.
I mean,
then-
I can't, because to, the infrastructure to develop some alternate spray fields would be a lot.
Yeah, I think
And
about
right
5
now,
million.
Bowers takes almost all our daily summer flows.
You're right, yeah.
And
It takes
so, I
all of
mean,
our
that's a
flows.
big deal.
Yeah. And they've indicated before to us that they don't like flood irrigation, but they've never cease and
Yeah, but
desist,
if
told
they-
us to stop.
yeah, But if they can see an end in sight, this, a concrete solution to the problem,
Yeah.
hopefully, okay. thank
Yeah,
you.
that's what we're hoping for, is that we'll be able to use it until we get the new plant in. As long as we're deciding to go that way,
Right, if
that'll be a
that's-
little,
Right, correct.
So that's one of the trigger points we were talking
That
about
would
in our
definitely be
first
one of the
meeting
trigger
with
points.
the lease expiring and the new permit being required. And we don't have a date on that. Our current permit's already expired, right? It's just
No,
when they
our-
make us get a new one?
no, our permit's still good. It's just the water board wants to update it. So they want it to be to current standards, so once they get a water balance, then they'll go back to their permitting department. Their permitting department will issue a new WDR for us, and then we'll have to go through all the steps to, but that doesn't happen very fast. I mean, that's probably like a 2-year process, so it's not going to be like tomorrow. We'll have time. We'll know about it. They'll let us know. So,
And they'll consider what we're in the middle of.
yeah. Yep. And so this is kind of just the future issues that we're looking into that we know are coming up fairly quickly. Environmental regulation changes, what we were just talking about. ARSA is probably going to have a new permit. The wastewater plant is probably going to be next for the new permit. So once ARSA gets a new permit, then they're going to start looking into Sutter Creek and giving them a new permit. A new permit will have a lot more analytical that we have to do. It'll be a harder process to control. Our current plant probably won't, or it'll be very hard to operate it in compliance all the time. So that's kind of one of the reasons why we would want to move to a different technology, go to tertiary, just for ease of operation and reducing our fines that we would get. I know Jackson has some problems with their MPDS permit. They're always getting fines because there's just a lot of constituents. And so sometimes they just get out of whack, and especially with our lack of process control, it would be very hard to control those. So. And then the disposal location, do we want to stay in ARSA? Is it even feasible to stay in ARSA? The water balance will tell us that, but that's one of our, decisions is, should we stay in ARSA? Should we go to direct discharge into the creek? There was a study done in 2012 by RBI, and it pretty much listed out what we had to do to get to an MPDS permit and what the problems were with that. So we're going to go back and have them update that to current standards, talk to the water board, figure out what's going on, see what it would actually take to get a discharge permit, see if there's any red flags that we just can't get around, so that'll give us a lot of really good information on where we're going to go, costs for it, all that stuff. We'll further define the problem.
Will the water board's joint balance report, disregarding politics and relationships and all of those things, will it definitively tell us, could it possibly definitively tell us there's no room for you and that's not an option?
I don't know if it would specifically tell us that there's no room for us. It would be
Say
very
there's
hard.
no room for everyone?
Yeah,
and
it would be very hard for us
we're
to
a part of
comply with
everyone.
all of our stuff, so we would have too much water every year.
I mean, the interesting thing is ARSA is the party on the permit. So I think CDCR is not on the permit, and the city of Ione's secondary plant is not on the tertiary permit. So those are the people who are trying to get added in. So rather than tell us there's no room for us, I think they're the ones trying to be added to the permit.
That's a very good point. Yeah. Yeah. So they might not be able to do it. And then if they don't have anywhere to go, everyone might want us to go out, you know, and then if we have the means and we want to do it, then it might be beneficial to do that. Just. And then just costs, you know, moving down the road. I mean, money is never cheaper than it was tomorrow. You know, you're buying. Sorry. Yeah. So, you know, the question is whether we spend money on our own assets or whether we spend money on ARSA, which ARSA is not our assets. They're the state's assets. So that's a question that we're going to have to answer, you know, moving down the road.
Well, and I think we can make a pretty fair assumption. Ione doesn't have a plan in place, but they're going to need to do some significant capital outlay
gonna have
on
to do
their
some very
system
significant,
that
yes.
they'll ask money of us for.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we would be contributing to the state and Ione's
And Ione.
capital.
Yep. And then our next steps, we're working with Hydrosciences now as our wastewater engineer. Gary Gio has been trying to retire.
Just yeah, so we've been working with Hydrosciences on the water balance. We're going to bring a contract to you guys. So we have it here as a done deal, but it's going to come to you guys for approval.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, after that, we'll get together a draft request for qualifications. We'll send that out. We'll get qualified firms to come in and we'll pick somebody that we'll be working with down the road.
Are you still thinking potentially in the March, April timeframe for that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say if not sooner.
Yeah.
Definitely, probably March.
Yeah, we're still, and again, you know, we've talked about it, but for the public here too, that even if we can issue an RFQ at the end of March, early April, you know, we're looking at probably about 2 years of design time, you know, which again, the last bullet here, and like we talked about earlier, it'll be kind of a full-on press to fill in the funding puzzle. And then again, if everything worked smoothly, which probably won't, it's going to take 5 years to get a completed plant operational.
Right.
So, you know, it may feel, hopefully it doesn't feel like we're rushing, but it's a very long process. So, you know, the longer we wait, the longer it's going to take.
What's the expiration on the ARSA lease?
I think we have about 32. Yeah.
And just to clarify, do I understand correctly that if we went with a design build, as we discussed with that vendor last month, potentially some of that financing costs up front could be pushed down a little bit?
Yeah, so some of these companies, we've been kind of having discussions with companies to understand their processes. And yeah, some of them we could kind of roll everything into financing. Some of them we would have to pay some costs up front.
Right.
So there's that trade-off as well.
Okay.
But there's the benefit of doing things up front is, you know, we're shifting risk, I guess, away from the partner. We're reducing that risk of the unknown, but it potentially will take longer. And again, that future cost of money could go up depending how long we take. So yeah, it's a trade-off we're discussing a lot internally. We're discussing with Hydrosciences. We're, you know, going to be doing reference checking and just try to make sure we're going in with our eyes as wide open as can be. So, you know, I think we wanted to give you this kind of summary and update because that next step will be an RFQ. This is a request for qualifications. We have, I think, at least 4 firms that we've talked to, but we will publicly advertise that. You know, and firms would basically, as opposed to an RFP, they would be telling us about their qualifications, their experience, who they would put on a team. And we would be picking a partner based on their reputation, their experience. And then we would move into what's called design build, where you work with one company who does the design and they are also responsible for building it. And once you get to a certain level of design, usually around 60%, They give you a guaranteed price and you continue right on through construction. And so the difference between a more traditional RFP design bid build is you don't do a design phase and then stop and put that design out for bid, and then you hand it off to a new company. And then if there's anything missing in that design, you pay change orders and things to correct, and there's kind of that handoff.
Tom, are you saying that the 4 companies you've been talking to are all design build?
They are, but they
So-
all do it slightly differently.
I understand.
Yeah.
So there's no traditional company that we're going to RFQ with?
No, I mean,
okay.
that would be us paying for a design and putting out an RFP and saying,
Right,
build us this completely spec'd out design.
okay.
Um, And I think some of these design build companies, they're used to working with much larger cities where the cities really dictate the terms, or the cities have engineers, so they do a lot of the pre-work. And, we're not in that situation. We actually want, I think, a lot of professional help.
Yeah.
And rather than pay for it ourselves up front, if we can roll it into a lease, it lets us, spread that cost over time.
Right.
This is informational, but just, we could acknowledge, I think the last council action on this was in 2018 or 17 to proceed with a plant if financially possible. And I don't think we've voted on anything since. So is that what we're still, you're looking for check-in and direction, is it, that's where we left our marker, I believe.
Right. So again, this is really an update so that we're not just coming to you. with
I
no
understand,
Conversation.
but just, for the public and for everybody's information, I think that was that we've authorized studies and work and all of this stuff, but I think that was the last directional vote, as I understand it.
So the next item you see will be a detailed RFQ form that will ask for your approval, and then we will get that. We will post it. We'll get submissions, we will review and score it.
Yep.
And then we would come back to you guys to say, this is the firm that we think best meets the needs. And there would be an agreement at that return second meeting, or whatever you want to call it. And that would be the point where we'd be, choosing a partner, basically.
So Claire, I'm not sure if I'm following, but let me share a thought with you and see if this resonates. Like, until right now, I didn't realize that we had absolutely decided we're doing design build. And I certainly haven't talked to any other members of the city council about that. You had us attend and learn more about this. I presume that you've talked to each city council person and all of them agree to that? Is that what's happened?
No, and I guess if you guys say you don't want to do design build, we can go with the more traditional route. I think our recommendation has been to look at design build.
Yes, and I agree, but I think that, I don't know, to me, it seems like it would be appropriate then as a body that we get behind that and vote to authorize that
Yeah, okay,
versus just tacitly going along.
right.
Vote or just a recognition? 'Cause
I don't
it's
know.
Not agendized.
Yeah,
Derek, what-
we don't have to do it tonight, but when we bring the RFQ, that could be part of that motion.
Well, I would disagree because the RFQ, it's already a fait accompli. You're
No.
only inviting design build people to
No,
participate.
we wouldn't invite anybody until you guys approve the RFQ.
Oh, the document
Yeah,
itself.
the document,
Thank you.
yeah.
So we would say, we recommend we do design build, and here's the RFQ.
Cool.
And you guys could vote on that.
That makes sense to me.
That being said, I was able to talk to you guys about that, and it does seem the best fit for me, but maybe it's a good time for us all to check in with the staff, and, if we had any more questions about one versus the other, just to not waste their time and everyone's time.
Yeah, I'll just quickly say that I agree. And appreciated the opportunity to learn more, and I agree it's the right way to go.
I concur.
Likewise.
Great.
Did the public have any questions on that? Will you post that on the website? That,
Yeah.
or actually, and in our packet too, there's some great background information on how it works, what secondary is and tertiary is. Hey, that takes us to item 9, mayor and council member reports. Susan?
Just Amateur Tourism Council met again, and they're continuing to do a lot of good work. And then waiting on to hear with regard to the assessment for the hotel rooms. Tom, do you know the date that the county's voting on that again?
No, I
They're waiting for
waiting for
information
Jackson's data,
from Jackson. Yeah.
right, so maybe the next meeting if they get it.
Because if people are behind it, they're encouraging anyone to go speak to it, please.
Jim?
No, I missed the last fire district meeting because we had a meeting on, it's always the second Tuesday, and we got moved to the second Tuesday for Martin Luther King Day, and we got moved to the second Tuesday tonight. So I missed the last two.
Mhm.
It was worth it for the Mondays off.
I'm not arguing that.
Dan?
Just quickly on that tourism business, Kathleen Mahan, I think is her name. I did meet with her, and I am representing our council in that effort. And she's sending me all that information. And so I'll be following up to make sure that everybody knows when the next meeting is and all that stuff as soon as I hear that Jackson has provided what they're looking for. And then, Tom, should I do a brief update on today?
Sure.
So today we met with ACTC to talk about the RTMF funds that were fronted 10, 15 years ago to build out the Bower Street improvements based on the initial gold rush. And so the discussion is about what is ACTC's expectation with regard to any new developer paying back that $1.5 million or what. And so we don't have an answer today. It's in process. It's a discussion item, and it's important. Because obviously if you're a developer thinking about a new project up here and all of a sudden you find out that you're on the hook for 1.5 for something you weren't aware of that you were going to be on the hook for improvements that were built 10, 15 years ago. That's a deal. So we're working through it, and we'll keep you apprised as we, get any additional information.
Would the alternative to repaying that $1.5 million be for ACTC to identify another improvement that a developer could invest in that's, current time needed to address the impacts of a proposed development?
As in an upcoming project?
Yeah, identify something
Sure.
new to.
Sure, and that'll happen regardless, but there's this adjudication of this 1.5 that needs to be managed somehow. And today, ACTC is not saying, okay, we'll just write that off because the person who was on the hook was a developer who went bankrupt. So their interpretation is the next developer is on, the hook for that.
Where did that money go?
It built that Bowers Street, Prospect Drive connection to 88
Okay.
up there. And it was a condition,
Ridge Road in Bower.
104. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, thanks, Jim. Yeah. Yeah, so.
Thank you, Dan and Tom, for staying on that for us. I have nothing except that we just had our annual strategic plan meeting at 3 o'clock, and it's a second annual, and I think it was productive and time well spent. City Attorney's report.
I have none.
Future agenda items. Nope. We have a lot of staff reports in here. Did anyone have any questions on any of these?
I do.
Go ahead, Jim.
Page 179, this would be for Mason. And the second bullet point is building permits. And you described we issued 9 permits and total revenue generated. Is it correct to call that a building permit revenue? Doesn't that building permit basically cover the costs of the city and staff to process the permit and inspections? And so
Yeah.
I'm kind of splitting hairs, but
No, it's
I don't think
okay.
it's really.
It's
rev-
not, you couldn't consider it a net
Right.
positive. I mean, it's offsetting costs for my staff's time, the Weber Gio's time.
Right.
I mean, all that
the
time.
That
ge-
building
um,
permit generates costs that
Right.
wouldn't exist unless the building permit was issued. And so that
Correct.
You're just you're covering the cost.
We could call it a fee.
Yeah, call it,
Yeah.
I'd call it a fee.
But you're
It's
reporting
more-
on it to
It's more of a
show
way to
movement.
quantify the activity level.
Activity, right.
Correct.
And I agree.
And, you know, because it could be 5 permits that are $5,000 or 5 permits that are $40,000. And you
Right.
could go, well, one of those permits was for a big thing. What was
Yeah.
that for, right?
Yeah.
So it's more for activity wise, kind of, and we're in the winter
Yeah.
time, so we're in a lull as
Right.
usual. So
That's all I had.
good question.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, that'll do it. We're adjourned.
Thank you.